My freeloading sister treats our family dinners like an all-you-can-eat buffet, so we finally taught her an expensive lesson at a fancy restaurant. I have this weekly tradition with my family. Every Sunday, we get together at my parents' house for dinner. It started as a casual thing, just us siblings and our parents catching up, but over time, it became an established tradition. The unspoken rule has always been the same: everybody contributes. Whether it's buying groceries, cooking, bringing drinks, or even just offering to help clean up afterward, everyone does something. That's how we keep things fair. That's how we keep things running smoothly. And for the most part, it works, except for one person. Let's talk about my sister Jane. Jane is 28 years old, a fully grown adult woman who, by some miracle, has managed to sustain herself on the sheer generosity of our parents and an ungodly amount of sugar. I'm talking 4-pound bags of Sour Patch Kids, Costco-sized boxes of fruit snacks, entire bags of Halloween candy inhaled in record time. I've never once seen this woman consume a vegetable, but that's not the problem. The problem is that for the entire time she's been part of this tradition, she has never, not once, bought, cooked, or contributed in any meaningful way to our Sunday dinners. She's never picked up a pack of chicken, never swung by the store to grab some soda, never even offered to wash a dish. But every single Sunday, without fail, she shows up with an empty plate and an appetite that could put a starving wolf to shame. It's not just that she eats, it's how she eats. My sister loads up her plate like she's preparing for an all-you-can-eat buffet that's seconds away from closing. She doesn't take 1 or 2 pieces of chicken, she takes 6. She doesn't serve herself a reasonable portion of mashed potatoes, she takes half the bowl. If there's dessert, you can forget about getting a second helping because she will have inhaled it before you even put your fork down. At first, our parents let it slide. They always have. She's their precious golden child who can do no wrong. The rest of us siblings were annoyed, sure, but we assumed she would eventually catch on and start contributing. That never happened. Then came last week. Last week was the final straw, the moment when something inside me broke in a way that I knew could never be repaired. I had spent $20 on cinnamon rolls and wings. Not just any cinnamon rolls, these were the good ones, the ones from that bakery downtown that everybody loves. My brother also picked up extra wings just to make sure we had enough for everyone. We all sat down to eat, and as usual, Jane made a beeline for the food like it was her last meal on earth. She grabbed 3 cinnamon rolls, 3, before anyone else had even gotten one. Then she loaded her plate with wings, so many wings that I genuinely wondered if she had miscounted and thought she was plating food for 3 people instead of just herself. And then came the Sprite incident. I had brought a 2-liter bottle of Sprite. I'd only had 1 glass so far, but there was still a decent amount left. I was planning on taking it home because, I paid for it. But before I could even reach for it, Jane picked up the bottle and, without a single ounce of hesitation, poured the rest of it into her glass. She didn't ask if anyone else wanted some. She didn't stop to consider if maybe, just maybe, someone else might want a refill. She just took it, and something in me snapped. I didn't say anything, not because I didn't want to. I had words. So many words. Words that were sitting on the tip of my tongue, waiting to be unleashed like a verbal hurricane that would rip through her entire existence and leave her questioning every single one of her life choices. But I knew if I started, I wouldn't be able to stop. And if I didn't stop, I would absolutely destroy her, and then I'd be the bad guy because heaven forbid anyone criticize the golden child. So I got up, grabbed my things, and left early. Later, in our siblings group chat, the one she's not in, I brought it up. Turns out, I wasn't alone in my frustration. All my other siblings were sick of it. Everybody had noticed. Everybody had reached their breaking point, but nobody had wanted to be the one to say something because we knew our parents would defend her. Well, I was saying it now, and we all agreed. Enough was enough. We're thinking of implementing a new rule: if you don't contribute, you don't eat. Simple as that. And of course, as if on cue, the excuses from our parents started rolling in. Jane doesn't have money to spend. Oh, but she had money for a $120 collectible statue. Oh, but she had money for that 4-pound bag of Sour Patch Kids that disappeared in 2 days. Oh, but she had money to eat an entire 10-pound bag of Halloween candy in one night like a feral raccoon. The only thing she doesn't have is shame, and our parents enable every bit of it. So now I'm sitting here wondering, am I the asshole for finally getting fed up? For drawing a line in the sand and saying no more? Because if I am, then so be it. But at this point, something has to change. And if that means putting my foot down, then I will stomp it so hard that even Jane will finally feel the weight of her freeloading, golden child status be damned. Update: for a brief, glorious moment, it felt like we had won. The rule was simple: if you don't contribute, you don't eat. It was clear, fair, and enforced without exception. And for a few blissful weeks, it worked. Jane, faced with the harsh reality that free meals were no longer part of her weekly routine, stopped showing up to dinner. It was peaceful. The food stretched further. The drinks lasted longer. The atmosphere felt lighter without the underlying tension of knowing one person was going to take 3 times their fair share while giving nothing in return. But deep down, we all should have known better. Jane wasn't going to let something as minor as a well-established and explicitly stated rule keep her from her God-given right to consume anything that wasn't nailed down. If she couldn't eat with us, she would find a way to eat after us. And that's exactly what she did. It started subtly, almost innocently, like she was testing the waters. One Sunday, dinner was winding down, and as we sat around talking, laughing, and just enjoying the night, the front door swung open. In walked Jane, all casual-like, with that forced exaggerated surprise that only someone with a guilty conscience can muster. "Oh, wow," she said, as if she hadn't planned this perfectly. She had just been in the area. What a total coincidence that she just so happened to show up right after dinner. And of course, our parents immediately started offering her leftovers. No. She wasn't here to eat. Of course not. She just wanted to see everyone, catch up, spend time together. Except the moment someone got up to clear the table, she pounced. A few leftover slices of pizza still sitting out? Gone. Someone's half-eaten plate they had momentarily stepped away from? Vanished. She moved with the speed and efficiency of a seasoned food thief, clearing whatever was within reach before anyone could react. And our parents just smiled indulgently, like this was cute behavior from their precious golden child. It wasn't a one-time thing either. This became a pattern. Sunday after Sunday, she would appear like a poorly written villain who refuses to stay dead, always arriving just in time to scavenge whatever had been left unattended. Mom would beam, "Oh look who stopped by," while the rest of us exchanged knowing glances. One time, she got even bolder. She didn't just stick to what was on the table. Oh, no. That was too easy. She waited until people were distracted, then casually wandered into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and started eating cold wings straight from the container. No plate, no napkin, just standing there, hunched over, devouring them with her bare hands like some kind of food. Gremlin. When confronted, she blinked in wide-eyed innocence and had the nerve to act like we were overreacting. "Oh, I thought you were done with the food. I was just helping clean up." And of course, Mom jumped to her defense, "She's just hungry, leave her alone." The audacity was staggering, but the moment that truly sealed her fate, the moment that made us realize that no amount of rules, no amount of shame, no amount of basic human decency would ever stop my sister was the cheesecake incident. My brother had brought a cheesecake, not just any cheesecake. This was a fancy, expensive, bakery-made cheesecake that he had specifically mentioned wanting to save for later. He had cut one slice for himself and carefully put the rest in the fridge, clearly labeled so there would be no confusion. That didn't matter to Jane. At some point during the night, when everyone was scattered in different rooms, when the conversations had broken into smaller groups, when people were comfortable, relaxed, unsuspecting, she struck. She waited until my brother stepped away to use the bathroom. Then with all the stealth and precision of a seasoned criminal, she slipped into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and helped herself. Not to a slice, not to some of it, to all of it. By the time the rightful owner of the cheesecake returned, it was too late. The fridge door was slightly ajar. The empty container sat in the sink, the only remaining evidence of the crime. And Jane? She was back in the living room, casually licking her fork, looking perfectly content, as if she had done absolutely nothing wrong. That was it. The siblings group chat that night was a war zone. The frustration had reached new levels. No amount of talking to her, no amount of setting boundaries, no amount of anything was going to make our sister stop. She had no shame, no self-awareness, no regard for anyone but herself. The rule had only forced her to adapt, to become more creative in her mooching, but the problem remained the same. It was time for a different approach. If she wanted to act like this, if she wanted to treat our gatherings like her own personal buffet, if she was going to ignore every attempt at getting her to act like a decent human being, then she was finally going to face some consequences, parents' favorite or not. We came up with a plan. Update 2. A week later, we decided it was time to execute the plan. Jane had spent too long feasting off the kindness, or rather, the sheer reluctance to cause a scene, of others. No rule, no confrontation, no ounce of shame had ever stopped her before. She had wriggled out of every previous attempt to hold her accountable, evolving her mooching tactics like some kind of freeloading Pokemon. Our parents' constant defense of her behavior had only made it worse. The fridge raids, the leftover heists, the blatant and unapologetic consumption of food that wasn't hers, all of it had gone on for too long. It was time to hit her where it hurt, her wallet. The setup was simple, methodical, airtight. We invited her out to a nice restaurant, a place we all loved. One that had been a family favorite for years. It was the kind of place where the food was excellent, the service top tier, and most importantly, the prices high enough to make even the most reckless spender pause before ordering. It was exactly the kind of place where her usual freeloading tactics would backfire in a way she couldn't easily worm her way out of, and this time, Mom and Dad wouldn't be there to bail her out. The moment the invitation was extended, she was in. Her excitement practically radiated through the phone. She confirmed immediately, no hesitation, no questions asked. There was no "oh, I might be busy," no feigned reluctance to make it seem like she was doing us a favor by showing up. She was ready. That should have been our first warning sign. She was already planning to treat this like her own personal feast. When we arrived, the moment we sat down, Jane went straight into what could only be described as a predatory state. She picked up the menu and flipped through it with the kind of focus and intensity most people reserve for studying for an important exam. She wasn't just glancing at it, not just browsing. She was analyzing, calculating, strategizing. Her eyes darted from item to item, weighing her options, assessing her prey. While the rest of us picked reasonable choices, an entree, maybe a shared appetizer, she went all out with the confidence of a woman who had already decided she wasn't the one paying. Free appetizers for herself, not to share, a massive entree that cost more than some people's entire meal. And as if that wasn't enough, she tacked on dessert without hesitation, as if she had just unlocked a bonus round in her personal eating challenge. She barely looked up, too engrossed in her own gluttonous planning to engage in any pre-dinner conversation. The only time she acknowledged me was when she casually turned mid-menu study session and said, "I've been craving steak all week. Glad you guys picked this place." Oh, we were so glad too. The food arrived, and as always, we siblings settled into the easy rhythm of good conversation and great food. We laughed, we talked, we enjoyed ourselves. The atmosphere was light, relaxed, and filled with the kind of genuine camaraderie that made these dinners such a staple in our lives, when our parents and Jane weren't around to ruin it. Jane, meanwhile, was in a completely different world. While everyone else balanced eating with talking, she was singularly focused, hunched over her plate, plowing through her meal with the urgency of someone who believed the apocalypse was seconds away. She barely spoke, barely looked up, barely acknowledged anything beyond the next bite. Every few minutes, she would shift her attention to her secondary targets, her appetizers, grabbing bites in between mouthfuls of steak like someone determined to set some kind of record. It was a performance, a spectacle. She was eating like someone who thought she had just won the lottery and was afraid the money might disappear before she got to spend it all. And then the moment we had been waiting for finally arrived. The check landed on the table. That was when Jane made her move. It was smooth, practiced, almost impressive in its sheer audacity. Without missing a beat, she stood up. No reaching for her wallet. No moment of hesitation. No attempt to even pretend like she was considering paying her share. Just a quick, effortless, "All right, I'll see you guys later," as if she had just wrapped up a casual business meeting and was off to another engagement. It was seamless, a well-rehearsed act. She had done this before. It was clear she expected this to go like it always had, that someone, anyone would step up and cover her portion just like our parents always did, just to avoid the awkwardness of calling her out. That we would once again collectively sigh, exchange silent glances of frustration, and reluctantly divide up her cost among ourselves. That she would get away with it just as she always had, slipping out before the reality of the bill could catch up to her. But this time, we were prepared. Our oldest brother stopped her before she could take a single step. "Hey, Jane, hold on," he said firmly, the kind of tone we never got to use when our parents were around to defend her. "We're all paying for what we ordered." She blinked, processing the words like they had just been spoken in an alien language. "What?" The check was slid towards her, the absurdly high number next to her order clearly visible. "We each pay for our own meal," I repeated, making sure there was no room for misunderstanding. "So your total is," I pointed at the number, letting the weight of it sink in. Her face paled. The transformation was immediate. The confident, smug, full-stomach satisfaction vanished in an instant. The color drained from her so quickly that for a brief moment, I wondered if she was about to actually pass out. "Wait, what? I thought you guys invited me." "We did," my sister chimed in. "We invited you to join us for dinner. We didn't invite you so we could pay for you." Her jaw clenched. Her eyes darted across the table, scanning for any sign of weakness, any possible way out. Her whole strategy had been built on the assumption that we would cave, just like our parents always did, that someone, anyone, would step up and cover her portion just to avoid the awkwardness. But the table was silent. The check was still in front of her. No one moved to take it. "That's not how this works," she said, her voice tight, like she was forcing herself to stay calm. "If you invite someone, you pay." We all looked at each other. "That's not how this works," my brother said, mirroring her words right back at her. "You eat, you pay." Update 3. What followed was one of the most uncomfortable, yet deeply satisfying moments of my life. It was the kind of reckoning that had been brewing for months, maybe even years. The weight of every single Sunday dinner where she had devoured food like a starving beast without so much as a thank you finally crashing down on her all at once. Every time she had taken the last piece of chicken without asking, every time she had drained the soda without offering to replace it, every time she had eaten like a queen while contributing nothing, all enabled by our parents' constant coddling, it had all led to this exact moment. For the first time, Jane had no easy escape. No well-timed call to mommy and daddy to bail her out. No half-hearted excuse that people would sigh about later but ultimately let slide. She was caught, tangled in her own greed, and the realization of that was plain as day on her face. Her usual smug confidence, the kind that came from being the golden child who never had to face consequences, evaporated in an instant, replaced by a flicker of something dangerously close to panic. The moment it became obvious that no one was reaching for her bill, that no one was going to swoop in and save her like our parents always did, she went into survival mode. The transition was seamless, almost mechanical, like someone who had rehearsed every possible escape route for situations just like this. Her first play was an old classic, one she had probably used a dozen times before with our parents. She didn't bring her wallet. It was almost impressive, really, the way she said it with such smooth certainty, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. Like this was just an unfortunate accident, a minor inconvenience that we, as her siblings, would naturally understand. There was no shame, no hesitation, no indication that she expected anything other than the usual response, someone groaning, rolling their eyes, then begrudgingly offering to cover her just this once. But this time, the group was ready. Our brother immediately offered to drive her home so she could grab it. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time, she had no immediate response, no quick retort, no easy escape. The trap had already closed around her before she even realized it was there. Her brain was scrambling for another excuse, another way out, but before she could fully process just how bad of a position she was in, the next excuse was already flying out of her mouth. She would pay us back later, of course. She always paid her siblings back. She would make sure to get us all tomorrow or next time. She just didn't have it on her right now. Nobody moved. Nobody even reached for their phones to pull up Venmo. Instead, we just sat back, arms crossed, watching her squirm. Our youngest sister even stretched out lazily in her chair, leaning back with a casual, "Nah, we'll wait." The restaurant wasn't closing anytime soon after all. We were perfectly fine sitting right there, and letting her figure it out. The flicker of panic in her eyes intensified. She had never been in this situation before, never faced her siblings when they weren't willing to let her slide with a vague, meaningless promise of payment that would never actually come. Without mom and dad here to bail her out, without her golden child status to protect her, she was finally facing real consequences. The longer we sat there, unmoving, unbothered, the more obvious it became that her usual tactics weren't going to work this time. The pressure was mounting, the walls closing in, and for the first time ever, she was the one feeling uncomfortable at dinner. Then came the guilt trip. She let out a dramatic sigh, shaking her head like we had just betrayed her, as if we were the ones being unreasonable. She thought we were family. Siblings don't do this to each other. Family covers each other when someone's in a tough spot. Siblings don't sit there and humiliate someone over a meal like this. That was when I finally snapped. Family. Now family mattered? Because for all those Sundays where she had shamelessly eaten her weight in food without so much as a thank you, family had never seemed to include giving back. She had no problem stuffing her face with food that others had spent their hard-earned money on, no problem draining the last of the drinks without replacing them, no problem disappearing the second it was time to clean up. But the moment the expectation of contribution was placed on her, suddenly, she wanted to appeal to family bonds? The shift in her demeanor was immediate. She knew, in that instant, that there was nothing left to say, no footing to stand on, no argument she could twist into making herself the victim, not without mom and dad here to back her up. The truth was too blatant, too undeniable, too overwhelming to talk her way out of. Her shoulders sagged, her entire posture slumping in defeat, and after what felt like an eternity of silence, she finally reached into her purse. And just like that, there it was, her wallet. The sheer speed with which she had previously claimed to have forgotten it at home made the reveal almost comical. It was like watching a magician pull a rabbit out of a hat, except instead of gasps of wonder, it was just a table full of unimpressed, deeply vindicated siblings watching her dig out a wad of cash. Without a word, she peeled off the bills, sliding them onto the table with a visible grimace. Her jaw clenched so tightly, I thought she might actually crack a tooth. It was painful to watch. The sister who had spent months pretending she couldn't afford to chip in, who had played the broke card at every possible opportunity while somehow always having money for candy and collectibles, was now parting with her money like it physically hurt her. And maybe it did hurt, not just the spending itself, but the loss of control, the sudden realization that the system she had spent so long exploiting had finally turned against her. The entire table sat in stunned silence, watching as she finally paid her own way. And then just when we thought the night was over, when it seemed like justice had been served and we could all move on, our youngest sister leaned forward with a smirk and dropped the final bombshell. Since we were on the topic of paying for things, it seemed like the perfect time to discuss all those meals she owed us for. The reaction was instant. Jane's entire body tensed, her fingers curling around her wallet like it might somehow shield her from the inevitable. She opened her mouth, probably to threaten calling mom and dad, but it was already too late. The floodgates had opened. One by one, every single sibling at that table started listing off every instance of her freeloading. The chicken, the wings, the cinnamon rolls, the drinks, the desserts, every single Sunday meal where she had eaten enough to feed a small village while conveniently never having money to contribute. It was all laid out, a backlog of unpaid debts so vast she could never hope to talk her way around it. She tried the family excuse again, but this time it fell completely flat. Our brother cut her off before she could even finish the sentence. Being family wasn't supposed to be a free meal ticket. Being siblings wasn't supposed to be one-sided. Family wasn't supposed to mean watching someone take and take and take while never giving anything in return, golden child or not. And in that moment, with every single sibling refusing to let her off the hook, Jane did the unthinkable. She paid us back. Grumbling under her breath, huffing and sighing like someone being forcibly removed from their comfort zone, she pulled out her phone and started Venmoing each of us. Slowly, reluctantly, with the enthusiasm of someone being forced to confess to a crime. It wasn't much per person, not in the grand scheme of things, but that wasn't the point. The point was that for once, after months of taking advantage of us, after years of hiding behind our parents' favoritism, she was finally being held accountable. And that was worth everything.